You ever have a ton of sheet metal to cut? You're making patch panels and whatnot, and you're going at it with an angle grinder and it's just not working for you for one reason or another. And you think to yourself, there has to be a better way. Well, there is. It's called a Beverly shear or a throatless shear. And if you don't know, let me introduce you to your new best friend. Stick around. Okay, so I said in the beginning that I was going to introduce you to your new best friend, okay? Well, here it is. It's a Beverly shear or a throatless shear. They're designed for cutting just flat sheet stock, okay? But they excel at cutting that, all right? The pros and cons. I'm going to start with the con real quick. I cannot take this off the bench and go over and cut something off of my car body with it. It's not designed for that, okay? But what it can do is it can cut practically any shape, all right? And it can do so without making any noise, without making any dust, without trying to set you on fire, shooting sparks at you. And it's never gonna get pissed off and try and bite and kill you like an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel is, okay? I think we all have had that experience, all right? But the number one thing that just makes these so good at their job is just the absolute precision and control you have over the workpiece that you're trying to cut out, okay? So, like I said, you can cut straight lines, wavy lines, big curves, even really small radiuses you're actually able to cut out with this, even though it doesn't really look like it can do anything short of just either cutting off bar stock or just cutting a straight line. You can cut practically anything out. A way to know if you're going to be able to cut it out, and this is a little practice that I've always done because I've had one of these in my life for the last 25 years or so. This is my third one, but I've never wore one out. Okay, my first one got stolen. That was an actual real Beverly shear. That sucked. Second one I sold with a business that I sold. I went with that. And this is the third one I've had. I've never had to change blades out. I've never broken one or bent one, anything like that. They're rock solid. So if you're looking for one of these guys, just buy one of the generic knockoff ones. They're all the exact same thing, just different colors, okay? So if you have to have a blue one, you can pay twice as much at the blue car restoration company that we all know and love. Or you can go to Amazon or Harbor Freight and get the exact same one in whichever color they ship you, okay? I'll put a link in the description so you can see what the going price is. They're usually around 150 bucks you can get one of these, okay? But they're well worth the investment, okay? So a second ago, I said that you can cut out practically any shape, right? This is just chipboard. This is like what comes on the back of pads of papers, okay? I use this to make all of my patterns for what I'm using. It works great for patterns on its own, separate from the Beverly shear. The nice thing is with this stuff is that if you make something, you make your pattern and you put it on here, if you can cut it out of chipboard with the shear, you can cut it out of steel. I guarantee it, okay? This stuff behaves just like cutting sheet steel, sheet aluminum, whatever. It behaves the same way. I also use this stuff for setting up, adjusting my blade, okay? So if you can cut a piece of that stuff nice and crisp and sharp with this, your blade is perfect, okay? A couple little tips and tricks for setting this thing up. When you first get it, you're gonna notice there's a little ledge right here where if you have the body of the tool and that fixed blade goes down underneath that lip, that thing's there and you'll have pieces of metal that run into it. Take a little piece, any kind of shim stock, a little leftover nib of steel, stick underneath that fixed blade, raise it up, adjust your blade at that time, and that's gonna get rid of the bulk of that ridge right there, okay? It's gonna just make it smoother to use. Beyond that, if you got one that's just really, really bad, really rough, just grind that down a little bit, okay? But this thing, the real setback, I would say, downfall, not really a downfall because it's not designed for it. You can't use this to cut anything else out, okay? It's just for sheet stock, okay? But it just does a fantastic job with it. One of the little side benefits, and it goes along with using the chipboard, I don't have a scrap bin anymore because you're using almost all of your raw material because there's so little waste involved in this. It seems like if you're using, say, an angle grinder to cut something out of a sheet, you always end up with those little triangles that you hold on to that you never really get to use again. I mean, once in a while, yeah, but this thing, you can trim off like a 32nd of an inch off of a piece with this. So even when I'm cutting out my patch panels, okay, I go back to the car to test it on there. If I sort of cut into my line or something like that, I can come back and just catch an edge with it and just shave off the smallest little shred of steel. And now it fits. I don't have to go back and I'm not rough cutting panels and then going and grinding them and sanding them and getting them to fit how I want them to. I can do it all with this, without any noise, without any mess, anything like that. They're just fantastic to use, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you a couple pieces real quick. I'm just gonna cut through, but like I said, short video this time. This thing will make your life so much simpler if you're cutting, especially if you got a lot of stuff to cut out. This thing is great, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and change the camera over. I'll cut a few pieces and show you, and then you be the judge and see if you feel that this would benefit you or not, okay? So stick around. All right, so normally, if I'm cutting something out of a big piece here, I'm gonna do that on the bench instead of being mounted on my welder. That's just so when I'm doing small pieces on the car, I can go ahead and see what I'm doing and not have to keep walking back and forth, right? But for this, we'll just do it on here, okay? So let's go ahead and we'll cut along the edge and round it out, okay? So when you're using this guy, your workpiece is going to be up here on the left side, and the waste is going to go down under to the right. And sometimes, if you don't mind sort of mangling your piece a little bit and having to flatten it back out, sometimes you can get different shapes that you're having a hard time with if you flip it over and go at it the opposite direction. And here I thought I drew a pretty straight line. Okay, so now, real quick, let's say that I overshot. This is a little bigger, it doesn't fit where it needs to fit. Instead of grinding this off, which, yeah, you're more than able to, actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up the edge. I'm not gonna start back here. I'm gonna pick up an edge. I just want to cut a small little bit off of here. How far can I go, huh? All right, well, I'm not gonna go down the whole length of it because who wants to watch that? But find my piece here. Okay, so you can cut very small amounts off of stuff. You can go ahead and adjust however you need to, whatever you need to, all right? And that's where it really shines, you know. It's like cutting out panels. Now, of course, straight stuff is just, you know, all day long. It's nothing, you know. And then, oops, you know how your corner never actually fits in the place that you're doing? You can go ahead and nip that corner off a little bit, or if you have a little step because you're using a cutoff wheel to cut it out. And like I did yesterday, I had a little tiny spot that I just needed to come up on the edge. It just worked fantastic. Okay, and then one other thing real quick. Let me find a piece of chipboard. Okay, so when I said setting up your blade, right? I said that if you can cut a piece of chipboard nice and straight, then you know your blade's good, okay? Same thing with if you can cut it out of chipboard, you can cut it out of steel. Now sometimes, like if you start doing this, if you get too much material going underneath the machine, then sometimes you got to come in and cut those guys off, right? Because that'll be bent down. So you can come in, nip those off, and then start again because you're not getting bound up under the machine. You know, if I start trying to come back here, I'm gonna have too much material under there where it's not gonna let me start coming all the way back around. But I've cut out complete circles. One time I actually cut out it was roughly about a 3-foot circle on a boilerplate for a sign. And that every so often, you know, you'd get too much material underneath the machine, you pull it out, you cut it off, and you just keep going. But as long as you can support it and reach the handle, you can cut it out of there. So, all right, there's my 2 cents on why you should have a throatless shear or a Beverly shear in your life. See you around, guys.